Good morning, Hong Kong, and welcome back to another episode of Hong Kong Insurance 101. We've had a bit of a break over the holiday period, but we're back today and starting our 2021 videos on a slightly lighter topic. In superhero and monster movies, what does property insurance look like? It wouldn't be an understatement to say that many people have consumed far more media and watched many more movies in 2020 than they would have normally done in any other year. If you, like me, were watching any Marvel Cinematic Universe films or monster movies over the last year and wondered exactly how the pieces are picked up after the wanton property damage and destruction caused by a group like the Avengers, then this is the video for you. When individual Avengers first started appearing, they generally contained their damage. Tony Stark only really blew up his own factory in Iron Man, and Thor limited his destruction to a remote corner of New Mexico in Thor. But by the time the Avengers rolls around, there's a full-blown galactic invasion of New York, and destruction gets bad. More movies mean progressively worse and wider spread damage. By Age of Ultron, the Avengers are blowing up Europe and the Black Panther ruins private property in Korea. Both Infinity War and Endgame see global destruction. Even individual characters ramp it up over the course of their own films. Thor and Natalie Portman destroy Greenwich in Thor the Dark World. Now, insurance is based on understanding risks and approaching them in a consistent and logical manner. By managing your risk, you are able to contain and limit your exposure to loss. By the time that Tony Stark has a showdown with a technological baddie in the middle of the Monaco Grand Prix, there may have been some radical shifts going on in the way that this universe approached risk. Or is there? Insurance is an old product. The concept of insurance has been around for centuries, and pretty much any risk that could possibly be covered has been covered. So it may not come as a great surprise that while it is possible to get fire and allied perils insurance protection, commonly known as property or risks insurance, there are exclusions commonly found on these plans that could apply to superhero property damage. More specifically, most property or risks insurance plans will exclude loss or damage that has been caused by any type of war or related perils. Now, related perils include things like invasion, civil commotion, military resolution, civil war, and so on. Any action by the Avengers or a member of the Avenger team would definitely be considered, at minimum, a civil commotion. With the literal invasion of New York by aliens in the Avengers, the exclusion is very amply satisfied, and any of the damage caused by either the aliens or the Avengers during the defense of New York would almost certainly be excluded from coverage by any existing property insurance policy. Even if the fundamental risk of the Avengers was not yet realized, and there were no superheroes and no specific exclusion applied to their existence, property damage caused by superheroes saving the day probably isn't going to be covered under an insurance policy. There is, however, a specific exclusion which would apply solely to the Hulk. Most property or risk insurance plans will normally exclude any type of loss or damage which is caused by nuclear contamination, radiation, or related perils. As the Hulk is the product of gamma radiation exposure, his existence is solely caused by nuclear contamination. So any property insurance company covering damage caused by the Hulk would have extremely reasonable cause to deny the claim, unless the policyholder has included a specific coverage for such damage. Now, it is possible to assume that there would be a class of insurance products created in the Avengers universe or any universes where similar risks exist, like Godzilla, designed solely to assist with damage caused by these risks. The Avengers are not going to be damaging all cities, everywhere, all the time. So, just as we saw with the COVID-19 situation and contingency insurance products, where event organizers could have added communicable diseases as cancellation risks prior to the commencement of their policy and the pandemic. In superhero universes, individuals and businesses properly managing their risks would have been speaking to their insurance broker or advisor about carving back certain exclusions in the policy and providing for coverage of Avenger-related property damage. The simple fact is that it normally is possible to find the risk coverage that you are looking for with some insurer somewhere in the world, as long as you are willing to pay a sufficient premium. And this should be similar to the Avengers universe. Even with current real-world property insurance products, you can remove exclusions or expand the scope of cover for an additional premium. Now, whether this is something that would cover the catastrophe on the scope of an Avengers attack is uncertain, especially with the standard exclusions in place with current policies, and the fact that it is possible the Avengers would be considered a fundamental risk, particularly if you live in New York. But even with something as bizarre and fictional as the Avengers, we can play out how insurance would help and what options there are for insurance in that universe. That's us for this week. We hope you have a happy and healthy weekend. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay current with all our content as it comes out. While this is the first video of 2021, we have a lot more on the way and some great content for you. Remember to ask CCW. We're simplifying your insurance.